Hey, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. The idea for this podcast came to me in the middle of the night one night last week. I was lying in bed listening to a podcast and I was like, oh my God, I should start a podcast. So I think it's really awesome that this is actually happening, that I am sitting here recording this and that you are listening to this now. Thank you for being here. My name is Eiley and this is the first episode ever of Pure Light. This is going to be an introduction to the podcast, to me, to my work, and what I'm hoping to accomplish here. So I'm going to start off by talking about the name of the podcast, Pure Light. And it all starts with Kundalini Yoga. So if you've never heard of Kundalini Yoga, it's a bit different than some of the other kinds of yoga that are out there. It has more ritual. Each class ends with a song. So there's this blessing at the end of the class that you sing, and it has the line in it, "May the pure light within you guide your way on." And that's just the beginning of the story. There's a lot more to this, but that's kind of the initial seed. So when I was in Kundalini Yoga teacher training, I had to go to these early morning practices of Kundalini Yoga. They're called sadhana. It's done before sunrise. So it starts at 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And you have to do, I forget how many of them, but you have to get a sheet signed every time you go to one of these to prove that you were there so that you can pass the teacher training. And I went to one, this would have been in the spring of 2014. It was on a Saturday at the ashram in Toronto, and a couple of my friends from teacher training were going to it as well. And when I asked the person who had led the practice that morning to sign this sheet for me, he said to me, "What does your name mean?" And, my name is Eiley. It's an Estonian name. I speak Estonian. There's no word in Estonian that's similar to Eiley. So I've always told people it doesn't mean anything because I never found a meaning for it. So I just assumed it didn't have one. And anyway, when I told this guy who had led the practice that morning that it didn't have a meaning, he looked at me as if to say, "You're an idiot." And then he said to me, "Every name has a meaning. Look it up." And he said it with such an intensity that I was like, oh my God, I need to look it up. So later that day, I went to the Estonian version of Google, which is google.ee, in case you want to Google anything in Estonian. And I typed in Eiley nimi tähendus, which means Eiley name meaning. And anyway, something actually came up. And I remember being like, oh my God, what does it mean? And there's this anxiousness about, I hope it means something good and I hope it doesn't mean something bad. Anyway, I clicked on the link and it turns out that Eiley means valgus, which is Estonian for light. And I was like, oh my God, that feels really symbolic. And then I Googled my middle name. So my middle name is Catherine. And it turns out that Catherine means pure. And then I was like, oh my God, my name means pure light. So it's the part of us that's deep within us that guides our way on. And I was like, wow, that's kind of amazing. And it felt really symbolic, especially given that I was born on the summer solstice. I was born on June 21st, which is in the Northern Hemisphere, the day with the most sunlight of the year. And so I was like, wow, my parents named me Pure Light. I was born on this day that is full of light. And so, I don't know, the whole thing coming together, I was like, oh my God, this is insane. My name has a meaning and it means this, and it has this connection to this day. And that day was also named International Yoga Day a couple of years ago. So it just felt like all the dots were connecting. And anyway, a few months after that entire experience of discovering what my name means, I ran into the guy who had been leading sadhana on the streets of Toronto, just randomly walking down the streets. And I went up to him and I said, "Hey, listen, I Googled my name and here's what I discovered. It means pure light." And he was like, now you have a purpose. Now you know what you need to do. And I remember thinking, not exactly, but okay, I get where you're going with this. So I ultimately feel like this podcast is part of my legacy. It's part of me trying to live up to my name. So that's how the name of the podcast came to be. And in terms of the content, my intention here is to share ideas, practices, and tools that can help you feel more confident, happy, and free. So Pure Light is ultimately about inner transformation. I'm going to be talking a lot about our inner experience of life, so our thinking patterns and our emotional reactions to things, and things that we struggle with internally, because those are the things that can ultimately make us feel like we're all alone, like there's something wrong with us, like we're defective, and like we're the only ones who are that way, and like no one else will understand. So I know it's easy to get stuck in there based on my own personal experience, and I am here to help you see the light. You don't have to be stuck in there. You can find your way out. You have everything you need inside you to do that right now. If you're wondering how I got to doing this, I'm going to start right at the beginning in terms of my own personal history. So I was born in Toronto. In addition to being Estonian, I am also Canadian. I grew up in Toronto and I went to U of T, meaning University of Toronto. I was there for engineering. And then when I graduated, I worked for a consulting firm. So I was a management consultant for a number of years. I worked for a big firm that got hired by corporations to make changes to how they do business. And my expertise was in the area of organization design. So I really was focused on the people side of things and helping people embrace the changes. And at some point, I realized that I either needed to commit to that or I needed to figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. And that's when I realized that I really wanted to focus on personal transformation. And it's kind of funny because I think initially my objective was to help women with body image issues, but it's grown from there. It's expanded a bit to self-image issues and really just being happy with who you are. Ultimately, everything I do is intended to help you tune into strength and wisdom that you didn't even know you had, so that you can step into the highest version of yourself. There are a couple of tools that I use to do that. One of them is Kundalini Yoga. Another one is behavior change coaching. So I'm a certified health and wellness coach. I do classes, workshops, talks, courses, and programs related to this. And now I also have this podcast and I'm working on my first book. Over the next couple of episodes, I'm quite excited about some of the things I'll be talking about. I'm going to be talking about things in a way to make it as practical as possible for you. So really looking at specific issues that people might struggle with and giving you things that you can start to do or new perspectives that you can start to play with to see if they fit for you. Some of the episodes that I have planned coming up include how to stop worrying about what other people will think, how to stop listening to the voice inside your head, the upside of jealousy, and myths about confidence. So if you're interested in hearing those and making sure you don't miss anything, be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this. If you'd like to join the conversation, use the hashtag Pure Light Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and I will be happy to chat with you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. In the meantime, may the pure light within you guide your way on.